guys, it's comedian Tanyalee Davis, and I want to tell you about the time that I went in a flotation tank. So I was in Manchester, England, and my friend Chris was telling me about how he had gone to one of those flotation tanks, deprivation tanks. Basically what it is a gigantic pod, like a huge ostrich egg, and it's got a hatch, right? The hatch opens up to the ceiling, and it's filled with about 1.5 feet of salt water. So you're very buoyant, and you lay in there in complete darkness, complete quiet, and you're deprived of everything for 1 hour. And 1 hour in this tank is the equivalent of getting 8 hours sleep. So I'm like, I couldn't get more sleep if I tried. So I'm like, can we hook me up? So he goes, well, I'm not really sure if you can, handle it physically. I'm like, let's just give it a shot, shall we? So we show up at the spa, and the spa guy comes over and he explains, here's the gigantic pod, looks like an ostrich egg, or it looks like the egg from, Mork from Ork. Yeah, it kind of looked like that. And he says, it's got 1.5 feet of the salt water, so you're very buoyant. He goes, there's a fresh water bottle on the side because the water is the salt water is very concentrated, right? So if you get any salt in your eyes, it burns like a mother trucker. So he's like, there's a fresh water bottle, you can squirt the water. There's also an emergency button on the other side in case there's any problems. And he explained to me that I'd be in there for an hour, and eventually the music and the lights would come back on, and that's my indication to let me know that my session is finished. And I was like, okay, well, I can't get out of here, right? So we all agreed that I would just stay in the pod, and Chris would have a shower and get ready, and then they would come and get me, right? All right, so I got lifted in the pod. It was the coolest thing, guys. I highly recommend flotation tanks. They're so relaxing. But at one point, I actually farted. It was like a cosmic boom. I almost blew my ear right out of there. Earplugs. So there I was, right? And it's just, wow, it was so relaxing. I was actually sad, when the hour was up and the music and the lights came back on, right? But I knew I couldn't get out of the pod. So I had like these disco lights going on me. I felt like I was in some sort of uterus. It was amazing. Nice warm water and disco lights. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And it had to be about 5 minutes. I guess the pod assumed that whoever was in it was finished, and it had some sort of self-cleaning mechanism that kicked in, because next thing I know, a valve opens up, and this jet of water comes shooting through the pod, catches me on the back of the head, and just starts spinning me around the pod. And it starts generating a lot of current, right? I'm going faster and faster. So I start trying to grab onto the walls, but I can't because they're smooth, and the current is just tossing me around the pod. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I was like, oh, there's an emergency button, right? There's an emergency button. So I'm trying to hit the emergency button as I'm going by, but I got a bad shoulder and I can't get a good bead on it, right? And oh my God, I was starting to freak out, right? I was like, oh, what if this has an evacuation hatch, right? What if this has an evacuation hatch and it opens up and sucks me down to China? I'm not going down this way, people, right? So there I am. I'm now thinking I've drowned, right? I start to hear voices. And then I realize, oh, it was Chris. He's on the outside of the pod. So I'm like, open the freaking hatch, right? So all of a sudden, the hatch opens. Chris's eyes peek through. And when he opened the hatch, it cut the supply off, the water supply off, right? But I'm still circling in the pod. And I look over at Chris, and the guy that runs the spa walked in, and he was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot about the self-cleaning thing. And there's me, floating in the pod, around going, I was so relaxed for an hour. Now I want to kill somebody. Plus, nobody needs to know what it feels like to be a turd in the toilet bowl.